Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable people get when you tell them you're not okay? They shift in their seats, force a smile, and say, "Stay positive, everything happens for a reason." It sounds kind, almost wise, but what if that sentence, the one meant to comfort you, is actually what's breaking you? We live in a culture addicted to happiness. Everywhere you look, you're told to smile, to be grateful, to manifest good energy. The message is clear: if you're not happy, you're doing life wrong. But the truth is darker and far more human. Because when we turn happiness into an obligation, pain becomes shame. Psychologists call it toxic positivity. The compulsive belief that we must always see the bright side no matter how bad things are. It tells us to silence our pain, to hide our grief, to edit our emotions until only joy remains. But beneath the forced smiles and Instagram affirmations, millions of people are quietly falling apart. They're not broken because they feel too much. They're broken because they've been told they shouldn't. Schopenhauer once said that life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. He wasn't trying to depress us, he was describing reality. To live is to feel, and to feel is to suffer. Yet we've built a society terrified of that truth. We avoid discomfort as if it's a disease, and in doing so, we've made ourselves emotionally fragile. This is the lie of toxic optimism, the illusion that positivity can protect us from pain. It can't. Because when you deny sadness, you don't escape it, you bury it alive. And what we bury always finds a way back. So maybe the question isn't how to stay positive, but how to be honest. Maybe the goal isn't constant happiness, but emotional truth, to let ourselves be human again. We live in an age that worships happiness. Good vibes only isn't just a slogan, it's a social law. Scroll through any feed and you'll see it. Smiles as armor, gratitude as performance. Whitney Goodman in Toxic Positivity, 2022, calls this the cult of happiness, a culture that confuses emotional repression with strength. It teaches us that to feel pain is to fail. Think of Anna. She loses her job and her marriage in the same month. Friends flood her inbox with mantras. Stay strong, everything happens for a reason. None of it helps. Their words aren't comfort, they're censorship. Behind every "you'll be fine" lies a silent command: don't make us uncomfortable with your pain. The result? We stop being honest. We start performing joy to fit in, to be normal. But the more we fake it, the further we drift from ourselves. This isn't a war against happiness. It's a quiet plea for truth. Because maybe the problem isn't that we're too sad. Maybe it's that we've forgotten how to feel at all. False hope begins with a comforting lie that happiness is a choice. It promises control in a chaotic world, that if we just think positively enough, life will cooperate. Good vibes only, everything happens for a reason. These phrases sound harmless, even kind, but behind them lies a quiet cruelty. Thinkers like Bailey and Hume saw the danger centuries ago. They argue that suffering isn't a flaw in perception, it's real, weighty, and often stronger than joy. One moment of despair can outweigh days of peace. When we reduce pain to a mindset problem, we turn human suffering into personal failure. If happiness is a choice, then sadness becomes a mistake, something to hide, not something to feel. That's how optimism turns toxic. It doesn't just deny pain, it blames the sufferer for feeling it. We see this everywhere. People lose their homes and are told to practice gratitude. Evicted families in London's Haygate estate were offered mindfulness courses instead of justice, as if their problem was attitude, not displacement. This is how optimism transforms injustice into self-blame. False hope thrives on the illusion of control, the belief that the world bends to positive thinking. But when loss hits, optimism collapses under reality's weight. That's when we learn the truth. Positivity can't protect us from pain. Real hope isn't denial, it's honesty. It's the quiet strength of seeing life clearly, of knowing that sometimes things are not okay, and that's not failure. Courage isn't about expecting a happy ending. It's about standing in the storm and saying, "I'll keep going anyway." False hope demands perfection. Honest hope accepts imperfection and still chooses to endure. Because the goal was never to escape pain, it was to face it and keep walking through it. The more we force happiness, the further it slips away. This is the paradox of positivity. When joy becomes an obligation, it turns against us. What begins as encouragement quickly becomes emotional censorship, the demand to smile while you're breaking inside. Psychologist Marshall Lenehan described this as emotional invalidation, the act of denying or minimizing another person's feelings. When someone in pain is told to stay positive, they don't feel comforted, they feel unseen. Instead of easing suffering, forced optimism breeds shame. The message is clear: if you're still sad, it's your fault. Studies show that repressing negative emotions doesn't make them fade, it makes them grow. The energy we spend hiding grief only strengthens it. Carl Jung captured this truth perfectly. What you resist persists. Emotions pushed into the dark don't die, they mutate. They return as anxiety, irritability, numbness, or a quiet sense that something inside has gone hollow. We end up living two lives: the one we show the world, full of smiles and self-help quotes, and the one beneath it, raw and unresolved. Real peace begins where the performance ends. To feel deeply, even painfully, is not weakness. It's the only way through. Because healing doesn't come from pretending to be happy, it comes from giving pain the space to breathe. When optimism turns toxic, the first casualty is honesty. People stop saying how they really feel. Instead, they perform happiness, smiling through pain, pretending they're fine while falling apart inside. This is what happens when society teaches that sadness is failure. We learn to hide grief, to swallow anger, to wear positivity like armor. But what we call strength is often just fear. Fear of being judged for being human. The emotional cost is quiet but deep. When you can't show pain, you can't process it. Bottled emotions don't disappear, they harden. Psychologists warn that forced positivity doesn't heal suffering, it isolates it. People start believing their feelings are wrong, that if they can't stay cheerful, they're broken. This creates a loop of shame. Hurt leads to guilt, guilt deepens the hurt. Social media amplifies this pressure. Every smiling photo, every motivational quote says the same thing: be happy or be silent. But behind those curated lives, millions feel unseen. Studies show that constant exposure to happy content increases loneliness and depression, not because others are truly happier, but because we're taught to fake it too. This is the emotional fallout of false optimism, disconnection, not just from others, but from ourselves. When we deny pain, we lose the ability to feel anything deeply, even joy. Real peace doesn't come from pretending life is good. It comes from admitting when it's not. Allowing sadness doesn't weaken us, it reconnects us. Because the opposite of despair isn't fake happiness, it's truth. If toxic optimism tells us to just think positive, the antidote isn't cynicism, it's honesty. Real healing begins when we stop fighting our emotions and start listening to them. In psychology, this is called psychological flexibility, the ability to stay open to pain instead of running from it. Acceptance and commitment therapy teaches that peace doesn't come from control, but from acceptance, learning to feel discomfort without letting it define us. Eastern philosophy has known this for centuries. Buddhism begins with a simple truth: life contains suffering. Pain isn't a punishment, it's a condition of being alive. The story of the second arrow explains it best. The first arrow is the pain itself. The second is the suffering we create by resisting it. We can't always stop the first arrow, but we can choose not to shoot the second. Western thought echoes the same wisdom. Carl Rogers said that healing begins when we accept our emotions as they are, not as we wish they were. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, wrote that suffering ceases to be suffering when it finds meaning. Pain doesn't vanish, but it transforms when we stop pretending it shouldn't exist. The middle path isn't about being positive, it's about being real. It's choosing awareness over avoidance, presence over performance. Because the truth is simple: we can't heal what we refuse to feel. And once we allow pain its place, it loses its power to define us. That's not pessimism, it's freedom. We've been taught to chase happiness as if it's a permanent state, something to achieve and hold forever. But happiness isn't a destination, it's a pulse. It rises and falls just like breath. The moment we try to trap it, we lose it. Real life moves between joy and grief, gain and loss, light and shadow. That rhythm isn't failure, it's what makes us human. Negative emotions aren't errors to fix, they're signals. Grief shows we've loved deeply. Anger means something matters. Fear reminds us we're alive. When we suppress these feelings in the name of staying positive, we disconnect from our own truth. And when we lose that connection, even happiness feels hollow. A smile stretched over Silas. The paradox is simple. The more we run from pain, the more power it gains. But when we face it, really face it, something shifts. Acceptance doesn't erase suffering, but it turns it into meaning. That's what the old philosophers understood and what our culture forgot. Light isn't found by denying darkness, but by walking through it. Emotional honesty isn't weakness, it's the foundation of strength. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to feel it fully and keep going anyway. To be human is not to be endlessly happy, but to stay open, even when it hurts. That's not despair, that's aliveness. We live in an age obsessed with light, with progress, positivity, and the illusion that everything will somehow work out. But crude optimism can become a vice when it blinds us to the truth. The world is burning, species are vanishing, and generations are grieving a future they may never have. To insist that everything will be okay isn't hope, it's denial dressed as comfort. Pessimism, when understood deeply, isn't the enemy of hope. It's the ground from which real hope grows, the kind that doesn't need lies to survive. It accepts the world's pain without turning away from it. It looks suffering in the face and says, yes, this hurts, and still, I will try. That's not despair, that's moral clarity. Maybe the real virtue today isn't blind optimism but hopeful pessimism. The courage to see things as they are and still act as if our efforts matter. To grieve what's lost without surrendering what's left. Because to behold the darkness and not look away, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's how the human spirit keeps its flame alive when the world begins to dim.